Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with the one and only Lisa K. Donner, Graham Noble, Dave Patterson, and James Fight. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. This weekend, 7,000 pro-Palestinian protesters closed down the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. In fact, pro-Palestinian rallies are popping up like the proverbial bad penny. The squad issued a warning to Joe Biden to be careful because he may lose the Muslim vote. Whatever happened to the Democrats and the Jewish vote, which they've had for like ever? The one and only Miss Lisa K. Donner is here with us today, and she has been covering a lot of this and can probably tell us who's behind this movement. You wrote an article on that very topic last week, and it's turning out to be one of the top articles of the year for Liberty Nation. What do you know, Lisa?
Well, it just took off, and I am glad to be on the panel and see everybody again. You know, I guess the question that was burning in everyone's minds was, who's behind this movement? And when I saw the picketers, I noticed these weren't homemade signs, but they were printed, and they had the name of organizations on the bottom of them. So it was really interesting. So I kept saying to Tim, stop the TV. What's the name of that organization? And I did some digging around, and the top of the list is the Democratic-Socialists of America, or the DSA. And they are 92,000 members strong with chapters in all 50 states. The DSA apparently says they claim to be behind working people, taking up the cause of working people. But last I looked, Jewish people work too. So that sounds a little odd. I think the bottom line is that they champion the cause of Hamas. They're out to generate some general unrest. And it's interesting because on their homepage, they have a huge picture of a smiling, gleaming, well, it's not huge, but it's prominent, AOC on their website. Anyway, so they're like numero uno in the group that are backing these pro-Palestinian protests. Then there's a group called Answer. They were founded after 2000, right after 9/11. And Answer stands for, are you ready, guys? Do I hear an amen?
I'm not sure I want to know.
Act now to stop war and end racism. Initiated by the massive, and they were into like massive anti-war when the U.S. went into Iraq. So you can imagine what that's about. And they say their coalition openly supports the Palestinian struggle for determination, which tells you enough. Anyway, before I shut up, the ADL also says Palestinian Youth Movement, Students for Justice in Palestine, and the U.S. Palestinian Community Network are all prominent players in these anti-Israel protests. So there you go in a nutshell, Sarah girl.
Well, I'm telling you, this is so nice to have you back because you just brightened my whole day.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, especially with you.
Yeah, you have been sorely missed, but I understand that you have moved on to bigger and better. Jim, you covered an article on the Holy Land and who really is claiming the rights to the ground. Can you give us a bit of what you found when you were researching that article?
Yeah, sure. I made the subtitle of that article. There's so much more to this question than this, just who was there first. The pro-Palestinian protesters, they're saying they want to end the Israeli occupation of Palestine, which, I guess technically that's true. The Israelis are occupying Palestine. The Jewish people took that region from the people that were originally there thousands of years ago, not the Palestinian, Arab Muslims that are there now that are saying that they're the ones who belong there. But
it was the Canaanites.
It was the Canaanites and the Philistines.
Right.
Just where we get the name Palestine from, the Philistines. They were not Muslim. In fact, they worshipped a number of gods. But anyways, that's really neither here nor there. The Jewish people have been in that region for thousands of years, since the kingdom of Judah was established in roughly 1000 BC. But the big thing is, why can't there be Jews and Muslims there living in peace? And the reason for that is that the people of Palestine, not so much the people themselves necessarily, but but the leaders right now, that's Hamas, but it's been other groups in the past. They don't want peace. They want from the river to the sea. They want Palestine eradicated.
They want
I'm sorry. They want Israel eradicated. I said it back.
Like, well, suicide bombing is a thing, I
Right.
guess.
Well, that's true.
No,
Right point, wrong word. Yeah, they want Israel to not exist.
well, I don't think that's going to happen, and I think they're way outmanned and outgunned. That's what scares me the most, is because
that's proved out in recent history. I mean, this is the third or fourth time that they've tried to have a two-state contract that establishes a Palestinian state and an Israeli state, and the Palestinians always say, no, let's not do it. They start a war, Israel beats them, takes more land. It's
Dave, Israel's sorry, that was just kind of cracking me up a little bit, and maybe just hysterical giggles at this point. I'm tired. Dave, Israel claimed this week that they are entering the second phase of an attack against Hamas. What does that even mean?
Well, they've crossed into the Gaza Strip with their army, and on the west side as well as the north, and they're moving toward Gaza City. They started by just short incursions to basically level the land to make it easier for their operations in northern Gaza. Today, they're closer to Gaza City, which will be a challenge for them with the urban warfare. And because it's always a challenge, it's one of the hardest ways to fight is city streets, having to clear every building one at a time. But nonetheless, they are making progress, and Hamas is suffering significant casualties. I think Hamas actually is surprised of the violence that Israel has been able to generate against their forces.
I mean, okay, let me back up and ask you like a qualifying question on that. Doesn't it seem like it would be just easier to, instead of going ground troops, wouldn't it be easier to do it all by air? Or are they trying to separate citizens from terrorists?
Well, as a former Air Force officer, I'm probably not going to generate a lot of goodwill, but the fact is that you can be a fighter pilot with your G suit and flying until the G suit squeezes you silly. But unless you have a person on the ground with a rifle that says, you can't have this square foot, I'm on it, you haven't won anything. And I think that Israel intends to make a significant and lasting statement that they will not tolerate Hamas in their region anymore.
And Graham, that's a perfect pivot to you, because you've been through this in a lot of different ways, and it seems like the situation is even spreading further. I mean, American troops have been fired upon. Hezbollah is bombing northern Israel. Syria's launched a few rockets. I mean, what the heck? What do you think is going on with the rest of the world, and where are they going to line up?
We shouldn't be deceiving ourselves here that this really isn't simply a war between Hamas and Israel. This is a war between Iran and Israel. Basically, Iran is fighting a proxy war, and Iran has a network of terrorist organizations that it sponsors throughout the Middle East. And of course, they now, these organizations are in Yemen, they are in Iraq, they are in Syria, they're in Lebanon, and of course, Hezbollah was actually created by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in the early 80s. So Hezbollah is very much an Iranian-sponsored group, and to a kind of a lesser extent, so is Hamas itself. And the thing about Hezbollah is it's much more as a fighting force. It is far more effective and far more organized and more competent than Hamas will ever be. And also the problem is that Hezbollah is not just a terrorist organization. It also has a political wing, and it has people in the parliament in Lebanon. In fact, a few years back, for a space of about 4 years, 4 or 6 years, Hezbollah and its allies and its political allies in Lebanon actually had a majority in the Lebanese parliament. and the president, Lebanon has a president and a prime minister, and the prime minister of Lebanon is a kind of Hamas, you could say, sympathizer or ally. So Hamas has a lot of political sway in Lebanon, and by extension, then Iran has a lot of political sway in Lebanon. And so this is way beyond, everyone's talking about Hamas, but this is way beyond them. I mean, basically, Hamas is a group of homicidal maniacs. But Hezbollah is actually an army, and right. Once they get themselves fully involved in this, which they're going to, then this whole conflict is going to get much more dangerous for the Israelis, and it's also going to draw Lebanon into it. Iran is already getting more involved, so this thing could spread exponentially.
You know, Graham, I'm going to pull you back in here.
All right. I was just going to ask him a question. Go ahead.
I wanted to pull you back in and know, you know, I mean, America's a melting pot. Are we going to see more of this kind of pro-terrorism, anti-Israeli outrage in our own country? I mean, it's a little disconcerting.
Well, I think to Americans, it's been rather shocking, the speed and the amount of pro-Palestinian sentiment that has been seen and heard of, people taking down pictures of those who have been held hostage in New York. That's a big deal now, and that's a big deal, and it's also petty at the same time. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on. It's like a cauldron that's been boiling that maybe we haven't noticed or haven't picked up on. But Graham, if I could ask you just a quick question. I've always sort of thought it like it's Israel against all the Arab world. I mean, there's this little postage stamp. It's called Israel. And then around them, they're surrounded by every Arab community. Lebanon is no friend. Like you said, Hezbollah. Syria is no friend. They've been shooting off some rockets. So it's kind of, but I didn't really think of Iran as sponsoring all the Arab nations. I thought the Arab nations need to take a little bit of responsibility for that themselves. Maybe not so much in Lebanon, because Lebanon really has been taken over by Hezbollah, but I'm thinking about Syria.
Yeah, well, of course, it's, you know, that part of this is there's a schism within the faith of Islam, of course, because you have Sunnis and Shias, and oftentimes they will team up, especially if they figure they have a common enemy, which is always Israel, of course.
Yeah.
But this is about this is less about the entire Arab world against Israel, because once upon a time that's what it was. But of course now there are several Arab countries that do have at least, if not friendly relations with Israel, they have some kind of uneasy peace with Israel, and they really don't want to. They don't want to tangle with Israel militarily. I mean, Egypt is quite happy with the status quo. So is Jordan, of course. But Iran, they are pulling the strings of all of these terrorist organizations. And so basically through them, they are essentially attacking Israel through their puppet organizations.
Dave, how's everybody funding this? How are these tiny little Arab nations that keep begging for aid? How are they doing all this?
Well, there is this, there is this axis of resistance that Iran coined, and so it's Iran. Certainly, Russia contributes to funding the terrorist networks, and to a lesser extent, North Korea and China. China, particularly with regard to Iran, as you know, the Chinese now see themselves as the great peacekeepers, since they brokered the friendship.
That's rich.
Between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But I think that one of the things that we have to realize too is that these things happen in the world because no one sees the United States as a prominent entity in the world anymore. When Iran fired a missile into a commercial tanker, Reagan took out 3 oil platforms, one of them being the Rashadat platform, where the U.S. Navy destroyed them all. And then the message was, and if that didn't get through, we will take your entire pipelines for your oil into the Arabian Gulf, and we'll destroy those as well. And amazingly enough, Iran stopped their harassment of oil tankers and cargo ships in the Arabian Gulf. Imagine that.
And when
Well,
we talk about who's financing all of this, you know, I'm not laying the blame solely at his feet, because that would actually not be fair. But let's not forget years ago those pallets of cash that the Obama administration flew into Tehran in the middle of the night. You know, we you know, I say we, not the American people willingly, but the US government, specifically under Democratic administrations, has to an extent funded these terrorist wars against Israel.
Well, I think it's time we stop doing that. You know, we seem to be skipping towards World War III. And if things don't change, it doesn't bode well in my world. The condition of the world is fragile right now, and Liberty Nation, well, we'll keep you posted, and we'll update you in real time with what we know when we know it. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform: YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at LibertyNation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are LibertyNation.com.